Hello and welcome to Brain Injury Bites, where we provide help and advice for people after a brain injury. Hi, I'm Ashwini and I'm a trustee at Headway Warrington. I'm also a senior associate solicitor focusing on catastrophic injury, including brain injury.
My name's Brooke and I've lived with a traumatic brain injury since 2007.
We're delighted to be joined today by Tony Ward. Tony is a director at Neuro, Rehab, Nutrition, which is based in Manchester. Although that title is probably quite self-explanatory, Tony, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm Tony Ward. Hi. I'm a dietitian now for 19 years. And so basically we provide sort of dietetic advice for people that have experienced traumatic brain injury or spinal injury, just to help them, support them for the quality of life or what other nutritional issues that they may have as well. So and it's great to sort of work in this environment, and it's pleased to be here.
What's the first thing that you think that you find, the main thing that you find that people are lacking in brain injury?
What, in the way nutrients?
Nutrients, yeah. What nutrients are they topping up or supplementing, maybe?
Well, I think it's more of that people just lacking in probably a lot of different things. There's not one specific. I mean, we always talk about sort of the balance and getting sort of enough sort of food and sort of nutrition. And you can sometimes find people with brain injury very sort of, some eat the same thing all the time, and they, don't like the vegetables or the mix. So you can get them sort of lacking in sort of vitamin C, sort of the B vitamins, and also vitamin D is a big one.
Especially if you live in Manchester.
And coming up to this time of year. I mean, to be honest, I think that's not just for people with brain injury. I think that it's like a chronic everyone, really, because we get most of our vitamin D from the sun. And, your skin sort of metabolizes that and you absorb it. And due to the short days and not going out, and a lot of people with brain injury don't go out because they don't feel confident to go out, or as
very
such.
Socially isolated.
Yeah. And vitamin D can be, obviously bone health is the obvious one, but your mood, it can affect you as well. So
should you take vitamin D and calcium together?
They say vitamin D helps you absorb calcium, but with calcium, that's kind of readily available in a lot of foods like milk, yogurts, cheese. And if you're eating that sort of balance...
If you're vegan, you won't get any of that, will you?
Well, you can get things through sort of fortified milk alternatives.
Okay.
Like oat milk, soy milk, almond milk.
Right.
Bread's fortified as well, and breakfast cereals. So, but if you are seriously lacking in that sort of food group, which you can take supplements to do it. And if you are not getting enough vitamin D, then, with the calcium, but you'll find most calcium supplements come with vitamin D in it.
Interesting. I mean, I do want to come on to the effect of diet and supplements, but I think just coming back to sort of the importance of diet and nutrition following a brain injury, and thinking about what kind of foods or balance can help with promoting brain health, brain recovery, getting things firing back the way they should be after a traumatic brain injury?
In sort of a specific for the brains, so your brain, omega-3 fatty acids are, a well-known sort of role in sort of maintaining the integrity of your sort of neurons membrane. And so that's in things like fish, salmon, mackerel. It's all the fishy fish. So the pilchards, the sardines. So a lot of people can find it difficult to have that. You can get things like get some other omega fatty acids from olives and olive oil and sort of avocado as well. But also antioxidants, because you got that oxidative stress, and oxidative stress can sort of cause make it difficult for your brain to heal or as such. And
can you just explain what oxidative stress is for our listeners?
Right. Okay. So basically oxidative stress is... It's basically when your body breaks down sort of particles, when you're digesting things or you're breaking things down, you can create what we call, again, these sort of free radicals. Okay. And they are like an absolutely crazy molecule that can ping around and it can damage other cells around it. And it's like a car producing carbon monoxide. It's the after sort of things, and basically, so the vitamins will kind of grab these damaging sort of free radicals, and and they kind of like hoover them up, and so it can help them sort of preventing sort of damage, and we say that as oxidative sort of stress sort of.
What I've had trouble in the past is that I've like acquired knowledge about things like that, but I don't know how to put it into practice. What I need and what people with brain injury need is like what's the simplest way to get those things into your body. I don't know. I guess I've always wanted to be told what I should eat. If somebody just sorted my meals out for me every day, give me my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner. But obviously you don't do that. And if you try and do these things yourself, what's an easy way to get those things into your body? What should you be concentrating on?
Some people go towards the supplementation sort of side of things, which we don't sort of advocate straight away. If I'm seeing a client and we always try and get that food, and we may do a meal plan, and everyone's different. Some people, like you say, I want a meal plan. I want to just be told what to eat. The only thing is that occupational therapists, they want you to kind of
make your own meal plan. Of course.
Things, and that's important because that's your quality of life, that's your independent living, and that's why we work very closely with occupational therapists, because it's easy to say this is nutritionally what you need, but it's not adding to your quality of life.
No.
It's just sort of, here's your meal, eat it, and that means you can get de-skilled or in certain areas of your life.
If you don't use it, lose it kind of
exactly.
thing.
I suppose as well, if you're being told what to eat, you have little investment in the process, and so it doesn't, you're probably not buying into the longer term benefits of nutrition in the same way. It's just, you're just literally being spoon fed in a way, rather than sort of looking at your diet, your nutrition, and kind of going, okay, this is what I'm going to choose. I'm making this choice because I need to introduce more protein or more carbohydrates or more vegetables or whatever into my diet because, or I've done this today and I'm particularly tired, so I need a bit more of that.
Definitely. It's if you go to someone and say, right, you're eating like that this is on the menu, it's like, well, I don't feel like that. I don't feel like eating like that today. You got to give people that autonomy to make them decisions of what they like to eat, but then be educated, to say, well, I can't have fish and chips from the chippy every day, or I can't have a pizza every day or a takeaway. If you give them that understanding of why they need that nutrition and it's going to help them with their rehab, then hopefully, and give them more options, then they can probably pick and be more invested in it. Because like you say, if they're saying, just give me what I need to eat, that's not investing, and that's not what they, they're probably not going to sort of initiate anything that you advise, because they're not fully invested in it.
And I suppose it's not helping them with their rehabilitation aims, because as you say, it's about promoting independence, and you've got people like the occupational therapist as part of the team who are trying to do that. So I suppose there might be times when it is necessary to say, right, you need to eat this, you need to focus on this or whatever, but it can't be a longer term solution. So I guess you probably have to make that judgment call as to when it's appropriate to tell people that this is what you need, as opposed to these are the things that will contain these nutrients, these things that you need to nourish your body, and off you go and figure out what you want to do with.
Definitely. It's or the whole thing of rehab is to get them to a point that they can be as independent as possible to live their life how they want to live it. And if we're taking the part of like giving them the food that they should be eating and saying just right, off you go, just eat it, then they're never going to move forward in that choice and give them that independence, because a dietitian can't be involved forever You know, we can't say, they say, right, I'm bored of the meals now. Well, give me something else. You know,
Yeah.
you've got to be able to, right, I've had enough of this one.
You need to know what's in it and what you're getting from it, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's part of that empowerment, I guess. Of the
I do
individual.
think you can be given too much at once, though. You know, like you can be given too much information at once, but...
Yeah. And how does that work then? Because you'll be part of a multidisciplinary team, and we've spoken with previous guests about, you know, their role within the MDT, as we call it. So at what point would you come in, and are you there as a regular a participant in that multidisciplinary team, or do you sort of pop in and out? How does that work?
So it all depends, again, it depends on the sort of client. We find it's getting better, but we find that we get brought in later on. They've put on a lot of weight, or the opposite, they're sort of losing the weight, or they're struggling, or they suddenly develop diabetes, or, you know, other sort of comorbid. And so, a specific example, if they put on weight and then it's affecting the physiotherapy and the rehab. So we've come in and say, right, okay, you know, he needs to try and lose a bit of weight, or he's got diabetes, he needs to get the sugars down. And so then we come in then. But ideally, when people leave the hospital, you know, that's when they've got to have that nutrition involvement, because it is the basis, it is the foundation of your health.
Yeah.
And you need to fuel that rehab.
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit like the adage, prevention's better than cure.
Yes.
If you're meeting somebody after they've already, you know, put the weight on or had a dramatic weight loss and they're poorly nourished, then you're almost firefighting that and trying to make some gains. Whereas if you're sort of bedding in good principles from the beginning, then you're probably going to have better outcomes.
Definitely. And it's a lot harder. Everyone knows it's a lot harder to lose that weight than it is to sort of put on that weight. And, you know, and it's easier for dietitians to come in and, you know, to prevent that weight gain. And I find that I've seen a lot of clients, and it's difficult to get that weight loss because the activity's down on some people, and but they're eating the same amount of food, and that's what a lot of people do. They say, well, I'm eating the same that I ate before the accident. I said, yeah, but your body and your life is totally different, and you're not burning them calories as much as you are. You know, your brain's not firing the muscles as much, so your diet has to be different from day one.
Getting older as well.
Yeah.
Metabolism's getting lower.
Yeah.
So to have that at the start, you know, prepares them, because people are going to create habits, and they're going to get into sort of routines. And if you can angle them routines early on,
getting the right routines early,
then their rehab is going to take off. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be a lot easier, or it's going to be a lot not easier. But it's going to be a lot smoother, because you're not going to get to the speed bump of maybe they've put on all this weight and now they're going to struggle with that physio, and they can't stand up as long to do prepping their food because they struggle with their weight. So yeah, it's earlier the better.
Yeah.
But with the MDT, we work with occupational therapists quite a lot in regards to the cooking and, you know, the facilities and as such. We also work with the sort of speech and language a lot, regards to if they have swallowing difficulties.
Oh, of course, yes.
You know, then we can help to provide meals and advice regards to puree. Because pureeing and overcooking food to get that puree, you can lose nutrients.
Yes. And I suppose because you're not masticating, you're not breaking down the food in the same way, so you're probably losing something from that process as well. It's a bit like people sort of say it's better to eat fruit rather than juice because of the way your body's absorbing and digesting.
Definitely. It's the kind of, especially if you're diabetic, because juice, you know, you probably got 3 or 4 apples in one juice. You know, when you eat an apple, it's got the one and it's the amount of sugar, and it's dealing with that sugar. But then you're missing out on all the fibre and everything like that.
Can you answer a question for me?
Yeah, sure.
Is sugar sugar? Like this fructose, which is the sugar from fruits, is that healthier than, say, I don't know, chocolate bar sugar? Or is sugar? It's just the
sugar is sugar. The way you get that sugar can be a healthier way, in different ways. So Fructose is basically kind of two different molecules, and you got glucose. Not getting into the science thing,
No.
but it's going to have the same effect on your body. It's the same amount of calories, sugar, whether it's from sugar cane, a chocolate bar, a sweet, a fruit, and that. But it's the natural sugars that you want. So
I suppose if it's coming with fibre from an apple rather than the cream and fat from a Cadbury's bar of chocolate.
Definitely. So it's not refined. So refined is a big word in confectionaries and ready-made meals and as such. And they just kind of have a lot of rubbish in them, and it's added sugar that is the sort of the bad thing.
The thing with no added sugar that you see on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like if you're having a piece of fruit, or rather, if it's got the same amount of sugar as this chocolate bar, I'd rather have a piece of fruit because you're getting the vitamins, the fibre, it'll fill you up. You're not getting the fat from the chocolate and things. So it's sugar. So like they say honey, and some will say, what about brown sugar? And all this, it all has the same amount of calories. It all has the same effect on your blood sugars.
All right.
But I'd rather you have a piece of fruit because you're getting everything else.
Everything else that comes with it. Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Coming back to what you were saying then about, being involved early on rather than later down the line. And I guess that could even start within a hospital setting while somebody's still a patient. But I guess you might also be faced with challenges over the fact that person's got a lack of control over what their diet and nutrition is whilst they're in hospital, depending on which hospital you're in. I don't know, Brooke, what your experience was like, whether your hospital food was good or not.
No.
But also, you'll get family members bringing things in because they want to do something, they want to feel useful and, give some home comforts or whatever. And so, and it's not as though that person can just get up and make their own meals. It's all being brought to them. So do you come across challenges then?
As soon as you've had that brain injury, there's a nutritional challenge. There's a health, your metabolism can go up, by 40 to 200%.
Wow.
So, your brain injury, it's huge effect. And so that, for instance, if you generally have a 2,000 calories, for example, then not for a normal diet, just to kind of keep you a healthy weight, that means you either be kind of having to have 2,800 or 4,000 calories. Okay. And also your body, having brain injury, you're kind of hypercatabolic. Okay.
Ooh.
So it's a nice word. So hypercatabolic. So basically, you're burning lots of protein. You need that protein to kind of heal.
I was going to say, is that the demand on your brain for the nutrition to heal it?
Yes. So it's it's like when you get that temperature, when you get that flu, it's your body's fighting that infection. Your body's trying to heal. It's gone through trauma. When you even cut your finger, it can get red and sore. It's that response. So you're trying to prevent losing too much protein, and it's really hard to. You kind of really minimizing the effects of it. It's so difficult to prevent it.
Does that just mean like you're more hungry then?
The thing is that we're at the stage where you're in probably ICU.
Right, okay.
These
So
are the days, but it can last up from weeks to a year, this catabolic to state.
So what I was thinking was there's a point when your nutritional needs slow down and then you carry on eating that amount and then you put on the weight. This is the timeline with it. And it's really interesting with sort of a brain injury, the timeline from the brain injury you've gone through hypermetabolic, hypercatabolic, you lose a ton of weight. You lose because you're immobile. You're using your muscle. The biggest protein storage in your body is your muscles. Mm-hmm. So you're using your protein to kind of heal, and then that slows down. That metabolic rate slowly slows down, and then within the hospital we're trying to get that weight back on, and we can do that through tube feeding or supplements, food fortification, and then you kind of come out of the other end, out of hospital. And you're probably less mobile, but then we're still packing in them calories to get that weight up. But it's a different weight. It can sometimes it can be fat, more fat weights and not the muscle mass. Because you have some people saying, "Oh, I used to do bodybuilding and I used to do this. I used to be really muscular." But now they're the same weight,
but a different shape.
Yeah.
And then they got that little belly.
That's nice to have that explained, actually, because I went down to 7 stone 9, right? And then I went up to, I think it was about 13 now, but I was about 13 and a half I went to, but I exercise more now, so it was a different shape.
Yeah, definitely. And it's trying to kind of make sure when they've come out of a certain point in this timeline, this nutritional timeline with sort of brain injury, that knowing when to say, okay, let's start getting that sort of healthy nutrition, let's get that healthy eating. So you're not going to be living the same life. We were trying to get this, in the way of physical activity and as such. Some may do. It's, we need to make sure you're eating what's right for you now, not like, I used to eat that before.
Yeah. Because if you used to go running all the time and now you're not, then your needs are different. You mentioned about the loss of muscle mass and the change in body shape. Is that sarcopenia obesity? It
can be, yes. So sarcopenia obesity it's kind of a phrase they brought into the elderly when they sort of get, they don't as active and, they're not using muscles, and you're still eating the same calories. So if you don't use it, you lose it to the muscles, but then the calories is the fat that they're putting on the fat mass. So sarcopenia is basically muscle wastage. And the obesity is of putting their extra calories on. So you can associate it with people with head injuries. They're not as active. They're not doing, they're eating more calories, because you get a lot of people that are comfort eating, as such. So, sarcopenia obesity is sort of kind of a new phrase. It's not been out for too long. And so that can cause an issue going forward, because you're getting heavier, but your muscle power and strength is still the same, not as strong. And then obviously rehab can be difficult.
So how do you mitigate against that?
It's kind of prevention, as such. So it's very hard to kind of get that weight off once it's on, because they are not as active. For someone who hasn't got a physical issue of doing sort of activity, we'll go to go for walks, we'll go for runs, we'll try and keep active to litigate, the food that we eat. But someone that's had a traumatic brain injury may not be able to do that. So, once they've come out of the NHS, say, then, just is carrying on that sort of nutritional support or that education, so they can be able to make them sort of changes. And and to prevent that, and you want to make sure they're getting enough protein, so they're not using their protein stores, their muscles. We want to make sure they've got enough energy, so they're not feeling fatigued, so they can do their physiotherapy, but not too much. As such, it's getting that sort of balance.
I feel like you are probably balancing many spinning plates at once.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you've got all that, if we had no emotion around food, then you say, eat that like a machine, and we just do it, they're great. But then you're dealing with, mood, you're dealing with, the foods that they like, sometimes it's the only thing they've got to make a choice on.
Yeah.
And that's why, in Neuro nutrition, we try and make sure that it's bespoke. We co-create with the client what they want to eat, and try to adapt it, but slowly and not too much so they don't feel like you're taking anything away from them.
You hear things like, I don't know, for instance, like you hear protein, you need protein for muscles, and then you can focus on that. Well, some things that I've done in the past is focus on like protein, like you just end up eating like a whole chicken from the rotisserie and stuff like that, and then you realise you're not getting any carbohydrates, and you just feel terrible. So I now understand the need for a balanced diet.
Definitely. You get happens a lot with the protein. I mean, I have people that have done weights before. These go to the gym a lot before the injury, and then they go back on. I'm taking protein shakes. And I said, well, the thing is that you've got to do the exercise. Protein shakes are really for athletes that are training 2-3 times a day.
Extra protein.
They're not getting enough in their diet, but we generally do, as a layman sort of person, we'll get enough if we have a balanced diet. And we only can process a certain amount of protein in one go. So it's...
So what happens to the excess protein then?
You burn it down into calories and then...
Does it get stored as fat eventually?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I guess as well, though, I mean, it's an interesting point you raised there about, you think you've got to have protein, so you go and eat a whole rotisserie chicken. And whilst I think we see this across the board and not just within, the brain injury population, but, fad dieting, etc. And it's like, oh, this is the latest craze. Everyone must have like avocados, almond milk or whatever it is. So, yeah, and I've definitely seen it with protein as well. But then when you introduce that within someone who might have rigidity of thinking as part of the kind of ongoing issues following a brain injury, that can be even harder, I guess. That can present more challenges in terms of trying to get away from, that very fixated one track, I must have this and this is how I'm going to have it. And I guess that, again, is where you have to work with the other therapists and clinicians within the multidisciplinary team, maybe looking at this neuropsychological aspects of that as well as the occupational therapy. And, how does your role come into that? How do you work with the other therapists to sort of move away from that rigid approach?
We work with sort of physiotherapists. We work with, with saying that's how we could help to fuel their sort of rehab, and we give messages to clients of when to eat, certain foods. And if the whole team speak the same language, when they're doing their therapy, because we don't go in as much as, say, an occupational therapist may go in twice a week, physio 2 to 3 times a week, they can give that message. So
it's constant reinforcement and consistency.
And we do a lot of training with support workers, and with sort of psychotherapists, we can talk about sort of emotional eating, of why they work on that sort of rigidity of thinking of as such. And I would like, for instance, the protein. Let me use a different example: vitamins and supplements.
Okay.
I have one client that just thinks, okay, I need this to get my blood sugar down. So they use I need to lose weight, so it gets a fat metabolizer, and he's, I need to buy, this from Holland & Barrett, and that's it. And they come back and they can spend, 50 to 60 pounds at a time on a ton of vitamins and supplements.
That person.
Yeah, and they think it's giving them best, but one who's probably 1,000% over what they require of vitamins. So one, they'll pee it out, but they can get toxicity of different things. And sometimes it may, it can maybe affect their sort of medications or what they're on, but it's unnecessary. It may be some supplements may be necessary, like a vitamin D if it's low, that the research is out there that it's important, but fat metabolizers and, all these different sort of green tea, supplements and really high strength vitamins can be dangerous.
I can imagine the things like that. I ended up buying loads of stuff from Holland & Barrett. I was taking like 6 pills on a morning, but then but I suppose you've got to be spread out throughout the day, has it? Rather than just taking it all in one go and then overwhelming your body with it.
Well, the thing is, though, it's like if you don't need to take them at all. If you are having that sort of breakfast, if you're having like say a breakfast cereal or it's fortified vitamins, you got the fibre, you get or yogurt with some protein, and then you're having sort of a lunch, a sandwich or a soup and a sandwich or salad, whatever, with a protein source and some carbohydrates, and then a meal and maybe snacks in between. Then you probably, hopefully, you get everything that you want.
That you need, yeah.
But the thing is, though, you have all them supplements. Your pee will probably be the most expensive pee there is, because you just pee it out. It's like you take multivitamin, a strong multivitamin. Yeah. Urine's like bright orange. Have you ever taken that?
Barocca. Yeah. Yep.
And you're like, what's going on there? So if your body doesn't use it, it'll just pee it out.
Yeah. So is there then any kind of useful role for supplements?
Definitely. I mean, there is, if you are iron deficient, It's important that, sort of fatigue and that, you can take an iron tablet to help you bring you back up to normal levels.
Or a pint of Guinness.
Well, they say, wasn't it like 15 or 20 pints of Guinness is like having equivalent to having, a small piece of meat or something like that in the way of iron content.
Okay.
I think I know which I'd prefer.
But it's something like that. That's not official. That sort of stuff. But the things about iron, it's like it depends on the bioavailability. How you absorb things. But yeah, and the vitamin D aspect is the difficulty. And if you're not eating enough, if you really don't like fruit or you really don't like vegetables, then maybe something like a bog standard multivitamin vitamin will help to kind of tide you over till we get them into a more of a balanced diet. So it's more of a bring people back up to a level if they're
like a helpful little push.
Low. Yeah.
I get these things from Aldi, and they're adult multivitamins, but they're in like a chewy
like the
fruit
gummies.
Gum, yeah. And I just eat them all in one go. That's not doing me any damage. I'm just peeing it out.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't do. Yeah, having too much, you don't want too much. Vitamins. Some can be sort of, without going to the science thing, can be sort of toxic for you.
So one day I'll get like 20,000%, and then the next day I'll get under.
Yeah, you need it. When you said about spreading it out, that's when you need to spread it out.
Right.
Do the one a day, what it says on the tin. But it's or don't get the gummy ones.
Shouldn't make them so nice then, should we?
I know.
Vitamins are not sweets.
I know, but they do taste like sweets. I have one for like hair and nails, and they are like sweets. Thank you for listening to part 1. We hope you can join us for part 2. Please don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share our content. If you do have any suggestions for topics that you'd like us to cover, why not drop us a line at hi@braininjurybites.co.uk.